Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you. A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. And today's music, created this morning by Rick Cleffel, is called Benny Revenal. Dreams, memories, and even symptoms all arise in the body before we are conscious of them. We can work with these kinds of involuntary imagination using the intelligence of the body. Today, we will be talking about the process of embodied imagination with its founder, Robert Bosnak. I am your host, Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. So let me introduce our guest. Robert, just let's say hello.
Hello there. You hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Wonderful. Welcome to live radio. So let me introduce our guest. Robbie Bosnak is a Zurich-trained Jungian psychoanalyst specialized in dreaming. He founded Embodied Imagination and is a past IASD president, a fiction and nonfiction book author, and a psychiatry faculty at the SUNY Upstate Medical University. He is also presenting at the IASD conference in June up in Ashland, Oregon. So, Robbie, so good to have you on the show. You are someone who's been on my wish list for quite some time, and I'm glad that we finally connected.
Well, I'm very happy about that, too.
So I wanted to have you talk a little bit about embodied imagination. What is that, and how did you get started with that process?
So when I was doing my training in Zurich and was working on dreams there, I had the problem that I didn't understand anything about dreams. And I was sitting with all these people who knew exactly what it was about and who could interpret dreams like there was no tomorrow. And I was sitting there feeling entirely stupid because I didn't understand a word of it. And then I realized that maybe the best way to go about facing dreams was to not understand them.
Oh,
So I began with completely getting into my not understanding of dreams, and it stayed with me for the next 55 years of working with dreams, that I don't understand anything of it. I don't understand dreams at all. And so what can you do when you don't understand dreams? Well, the only way to go about it is to get back into the dream.
mm-hmm.
And so what I developed was a way to use flashback memory. I mean, we know flashback memory from trauma, where people flash back into the event. Flashback memory makes you feel that you're back in the event. So I developed ways to use flashback memory to get back into the dream. And then as you're in the dream, you begin to experience the dream, and because you're in a reality, right? My definition of dreaming, I've traveled all over the world to ask people, what do you dream? How do you dream? On all continents except for Antarctica. And the answer is always the same. I was somewhere, something happened, and then I woke up. So that's my definition of dreaming. Being somewhere where something happens and then you wake up.
Oh,
So, yeah. And so that's my definition of dreaming that holds true the world over. It's non-cultural because in every culture you find that answer.
mm-hmm.
Every other definition of dreaming is cultural. Like, it's cultural to think that dreams are about you. Right? It's a purely cultural thing. It's in a world of individualism. You believe the dreams are about you. And when I was in the outback in Australia, there was somebody who had a dream about having sitting around a campfire with songs and dances in it, and I gave all kinds of, is it about this, is it about that? And she had no other, it was a conversation, translation from Pityajar. And then in the end I asked her, well, what is this dream? She says, well, it's a dream with a dance in it. I'm teaching the dance to my people, and we dance it for the mountains, so the mountains won't lose their memory. So the notion that dreams are about us is also a cultural notion. So the notion that dreams are about our inner life, all these things are cultural notions. The only thing that holds true the world over, somewhere something happens and then you wake up. So to get back to that somewhere, to that place, a dream is a place. It's not first a story, in the same way that our encounter is not in the first place a story. Our encounter is an event. And I see you on my computer, and you see me in some other way, maybe also on a computer. And that is the space that we're in. So we're in a space together. And so what I'm doing is getting back into the space by way of flashback, and then experiencing the environment with the body. And that's why it becomes embodied imagination, because we know also from neuroscience that you experience things first in your body.
Right.
If you walk through the woods and you see something and suddenly you jump back, and then after several milliseconds, it gets to your visual cortex, and the visual cortex tells you, no, it's not a snake, it's a stick. And then it corrects it. But first it goes directly in through the short circuit into the amygdala, right into the system. So the body experiences things long before the mind knows what it's about. So therefore, I find embodied knowing of great importance and focus on that.
Okay, right. I love that. Just like the idea of like really not knowing what a dream means. I think that's very powerful and very freeing, and it aligns very much with my experience. More and more letting go of analysis, and I appreciate your cultural correction that we have cultural ways of looking at dreams, like in this individualistic society that it's about the personality and the I and the me, and in this other societies, and for us as well, it could be cultural. We had Dina Metzger on the show last week, and she talked a lot about how dreams are messages from spirits for our communities, not for us personally, but for our communities. And so you're talking about the body, and I've heard this, that we often will act, and then the mind thinks of why we acted after the fact.
Yeah.
And so, but what is true is the body acts. And you're even talking at the level of symptoms. I wonder if you'd like to talk a little bit about symptoms and how that manifests, and how we can use some of this information to help us relieve some of these symptoms.
The way that I work with a symptom is I first go to the location of the symptom. So let me talk about a person who has asthma. So this
Like me. Actually, I have asthma.
So the symptom is in her lungs. And as she is experiencing the symptoms in her lungs, I ask her to slow it down and focus the attention inside her lungs. So the attention moves away from the mind and sinks down the body into the lungs. And then I ask her to sense the lungs and to begin to feel around in the lungs. And the first thing that she says is all bright red. And I help her focus on the bright red. And then she says it's very jagged. And then I help her focus on the jagged, and she says it's like jagged mountains. And we focus on those jagged mountains, and then I ask her to move the perspective away from her experiencing the jagged mountains into the jagged mountains experiencing themselves. So that I call that a transit, a movement to another perspective, from the perspective of the imagination. So now we're getting into the perspective of the mountains. She can feel the jaggedness from the perspective of the mountains, and she can feel the redness and the burning redness of it. And as she gets deeper into it from the perspective of the mountain, she begins to feel how the mountains begin to erode. As long as she stays in the perspective of the mountains begin to erode and begin to get a little bit smoother, and she begins to breathe more easily. And so that she then applies whenever she has an asthmatic attack. She goes into the perspective of the mountain so that she can feel it, not into her own perspective that will eventually go into she can't breathe anymore, into another perspective where the mountains become less jagged. And so that's one of the ways to work with the symptom, that you go into it, you wait until it becomes an environment, because then you're in an image, right? An image is an environment in which you find yourself. And so then it becomes an environment, and then in the environment, you move the perspective away from the I into the other.
Okay.
By moving it into the other, something begins to change.
Oh, okay. So one of the key things is to focus on the images that arise from the body, that the image that comes as you focus on the symptom.
Yes, and the image arises spontaneously. If you make it up, that could be like mountains. If you make it up, that's called fabrication. Fabrication doesn't have embodiment. Fabrication is a mental process. It is a thought parading as an image. And so so you have to stay away from fabrication.
That could be difficult? I mean, how do you distinguish one from the other? Because my thoughts are pretty quick, and they get right in there sometimes.
By slowing it down. The process of embodied imagination is all about slowing it down. By slowing it down, you move out of your habitual consciousness that is always going really fast into an embodied state. And that slowing down takes a lot of effort. That's why working in embodied imagination is kind of tiring, because you constantly go against the natural speed of the imagination.
Okay. I love that. Okay, so interesting. So these images, I'm like it seems like there's several different kinds of these involuntary images. We've talked about dreams, we've talked about symptoms, and another one that I sometimes happens to me is memories. Like I actually get these memories that arise for no particular reason of maybe like a particular street in childhood. It just arises. It's a certain time of year. I'm in the street, and then it goes away again. And I've often wondered what these spontaneous memories are pointing to, or like how to address those. What do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. With memories, I do the same thing. I don't understand them. I just let them be, and then I try to move again into another perspective, because usually these memories are from the I person, the habitual consciousness is the narrator.
Yeah.
So I get out of the narrator's perspective into, for instance, you're walking in the street with your best friend and something happens to the two of you, to begin to experience it from the perspective of your friend, and then to experience it from the perspective of the bicyclist coming at you and creating an accident or something like that. So always the movement out of the narrator's perspective into another perspective usually is the most valuable thing that you can do with dreams and with memories and with symptoms.
Moving out of the narrator's perspective into another perspective as part of the image. So another character.
Yeah.
Like in the idea with the asthma, you talked about becoming the perspective of the mountains.
Yes, exactly.
So it doesn't have to be a human being. It can also be like a character.
Yes. And for instance, one of the things that struck me very much when I was working with trauma, I work with trauma a lot, of course, is that as I was as I was working with that, wait, maybe I should turn this on. As I was working with that, this was the trauma of a woman who had been raped, um, and for a long time you couldn't get at it because it was such a horrible, terrible experience. And then, but the way that it was possible to get at it was there was a big closet at the somewhere on the side of the room, and I helped her to identify with that closet, to feel the solidity of the closet, and to feel the way that it was standing there. And it's an old closet, has been standing there for a long time. And when she was identified with the closet, then from the perspective of the closet in peripheral vision, she could see what was happening far away on the way other side of the room. And that made it possible to begin to experience it a little bit and to move out of that dissociation that she was in, that was harming her love life terribly.
Right. Because often people who have trauma have nightmares that are reenactments of the trauma and that are very difficult to approach. And the fact that we wake up before the dream can shift in any kind of a way. And so you're suggesting taking some kind of neutral part of the scene where the trauma occurred and viewing it from that perspective?
Yeah, I call that the neutral witness. And so if you are in a place where there's a big rock, then let your attention go to the rock, become embodied by the rock, feel the presence of the rock, the solidity of the rock, and then in peripheral vision, from the perspective of the rock, begin to experience the traumatic situation way over there.
Ah, okay. So you get some distance, some perspective on.
And not just distance, but you're no longer identified with it.
Okay. Okay. So you get some relief from reliving the trauma.
Yes. And then, and since you're not reliving it, you still can experience something because you're experiencing it in peripheral vision, but it's very distant. And then you can experience it from a distance, and then you can slowly let the dissociation come back in.
Okay. Okay. So this is great. So Robbie Bosnak, I have another question before we go to our break, is that you will be coming to the IASD conference in June and will be giving a presentation along with Judy White and Lana Nasser. Lana Nasser was a recent guest on the show. And it's going to be talking about dreams of Palestinians and Jews called Dreaming Diaspora. And I wonder if you'd like to say a little bit about this workshop and what you're hoping to open up and experience.
Yeah. So Lana is Palestinian and I'm a Jew. The separation and the polarity between Palestinians and Jews has become extreme. And so what we are going to be doing is we're going to be working on two dreams. One dreamt by a Palestinian, one dreamt by a Jew about war. We do not know who is dreaming what. So we are entering the dream not knowing who the dreamer is, and help the audience to get into the dreaming and from different perspectives in the dreamings, so that the audience also don't know if they're working on a dream that was dreamt by a Jew or dreamt by a Palestinian, so that you can get into the experience of it without having your political preconceptions activated.
I love that. Okay, and it's all from the non-interpretive point of view.
Totally.
I love that. I think that's a really valuable way of approaching things, and not just dreams, but also our waking life interactions.
Can I say something more?
Please, yes. Yes.
And that is that in Asclepian healing sanctuaries, there was always a theater. Usually there was a theater. And because if you go into the theater of tragedy, that has a healing effect. Like we are now not so much dealing with it as a tragedy, we're dealing it as a political fight and as a fury and not as something that is purely a tragedy. And so going into an event as tragic has a healing effect. We know that for 2,500 years.
I see. I love that. Right. Really bringing it back to the human level of the tragedy and the loss and the trauma that's unfolding there.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is Robbie Bosnak. He is the founder of Embodied Imagination, and you can find that work at embodiedimagination.com. And I'd like to just say that next week, please tune in for my in-depth conversation with lucid dreamer Claire Johnson about her ideas around what she calls the joy factor. The Dream Journal is broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU and up at KOWS in Sonoma. We are podcast everywhere on the Monday after the show. Full-length videos of the conversations can be found on Spotify and also on my YouTube page at Experiential Dreamwork. And before we take our break, I want to welcome to the studio Christine Barrington, who has a little more to say about our host. I like to call KSQD our mothership.
Indeed. We're all floating in this wonderful, wonderful vehicle, right? Where we get to tell these stories and hear these storytellers like your guest, who is sharing such wisdom that is needed for this time. And that's one of the things that I love about KSQD, right? I love to say our mission is to build a community through quality programming. And hearing, this discussion of trying to bring people into a cracked open space around the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. What a beautiful thing to help us reweave the global world community. And this is the kind of programming that is so important and so valuable today and rich with the values, right, that we can believe in. And so you're listening to the show. We know you appreciate it. And so we're asking you to please consider donating to this station so we can continue to bring you all this fabulous storytelling.
To support the Dream Journal and KSQD, please go to ksqd.org and press the big donate button. If you're using the app, just press the cute little icon at the bottom. If you're not using the app, go get it. It's on the App Store. Just type in KSQD and look for our squiddy logo. Thanks for supporting KSQD and the Dream Journal.
Do you have anything you want to say to the guest? All right, you are listening to the Dream Journal, and I am Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork. I'd like to send out a welcome to our far-flung listeners, and we have had some really far-flung listeners lately. Let's see who's on the station today. Well, we have a lot. Oh, we're looking good. We have all over California, including Pacoima, California. I've never heard of that one. That's a new listener. Welcome. La Habra, California, Riverside, Corona, Boardman, Oregon, Taos, New Mexico, Council Bluffs, Iowa, Atlanta, Georgia, Toronto, Ontario, Ashburn, Virginia, Surrey, British Columbia, and Quebec in Canada. And we also have our Moscow listener from Russia. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. And it just goes to show that people from all over the world are interested in dreaming. And those are just the live streamers. We have hundreds more who listen to the podcast when it is released on Monday. If you want to join us and help us nudge that algorithm to spread interest in dreaming, please subscribe to the Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for your generous ratings and reviews and for sharing episodes on your social media. It really helps more than you know. But most importantly, consider telling your friends about the podcast, because even though it doesn't show up in any algorithm anywhere, it's the most important thing is human relationship. And talking to somebody about dreams is one of the most important things we can do. And as our guest is saying, we don't need to understand our dreams to have a valuable time talking about them. You might just find your next dream sharing buddy. So you can follow the Dream Journal, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and on YouTube by looking for @Experiential Dreamwork. So our guest is Robert Bosnak, the founder of Embodied Imagination and really an institution in Dreamwork. I remember during the pandemic that you did this weekly show through the Young platform, which is one of your main platforms, I understand, where you would have live callers, people would call in, and you would help them experience their dreams. And you did that for several years, right, Robbie?
Yeah, we did it for 18 months every Friday night or every Thursday night.
Oh, okay.
And it was called the Spooky Dreams Cafe.
That's right.
I would work with 5 dreams in an hour, which was of course ridiculous, but I did, and people were there from all over the world. And then when it hit India, we moved the Spooky Dreams Cafe to an Indian time slot and continued. And it was listened to by hundreds of people, if not thousands, over the whole period.
I'm sure.
So it's very interesting.
And you have quite a few classes on the Young platform still, is that right?
Yes, I am. My next, my last class was about fear of the future, and my next class is about psychedelic integration. So the use of psychedelic medicine and the integration into the habitual system. So because I'm doing research in that at the moment, starting new research, and I've been involved in studying that for the last 60 years. So I'm very eager to explore what it's like in 2026 when the neuroscience is much more developed than it was 60 years ago.
Right, right. So interesting. You bring up the topic of psychedelics, and I'm curious if you have thoughts about that. Talk about involuntary images. I mean, I've had psychedelic experiences where images come up, or maybe transforming of what I'm seeing through my physical eyes, like the images change, and it feels very involuntary. And is there a way that you can work with these kinds of images through the embodied imagination approach?
Yes, this very well, in fact. That's why we're studying embodied imagination for psychedelic integration. The most important thing to realize when you are in a psychedelic experience is that you are in dual consciousness, that you are in 2 worlds simultaneously. The moment that you think you're in one world, the moment that you think you're that the ghost that is walking at you is a physical presence, then you are in one world, and then you are in hallucination. And I think that it's much better to not be in hallucination. I think it's much better to be in dual consciousness, where you are fully in that world, but realize that you're in an imaginal world, not imaginary. Imaginary means that it's not true. We call it imaginal. It is a world that is made of imagination, of an imaginal reality. So you're in another reality. You're in 2 realities at the same time. Like when we do the research, it's being done with cancer patients. When we do the research and you say to a person, now we have to put a blood pressure cuff on, they know that that's happening in another world than the world of the psilocybin experience. So you are in 2 worlds simultaneously. And I think if you can hold that consciousness, that the world of imagination is a real world, it presents itself as reality, it's experienced as reality, that it's a real world, just as real as the physical world, but it's not the same world.
Okay, right.
Then you can get most out of it.
Interesting. That reminds me quite a bit about lucid dreaming, in that you know that you're dreaming. So there's a part of you that knows that this what you're seeing visibly is well, it's true. I mean, it's a dream world, but it is a world. But there's part of us knows that we're laying in bed as well, asleep. So that's a kind of a dual consciousness as well.
That's dual consciousness. And so what I am trying to help train people is to have that dual consciousness go on all the time. For instance, I was speaking to a person who feels paralyzed. She can't get out of bed, and and therefore she does not go out of bed and stays in bed. If she can get, and that's what we are trying to do, if she can get into dual consciousness, she knows that she feels paralyzed, which doesn't mean that her physical body actually is physically paralyzed, but that the state of feeling paralyzed is a real experience, but it's an experience that does not necessarily mean that she cannot literally get out of bed. So then she's in dual consciousness. She feels the reality of the paralysis, and she feels that her physical body is not physically paralyzed. And then she can get out of bed, and it can start to change things.
Oh, I love that. That is really amazing to have that dual consciousness. We have a in-studio question from Christine Barrington. Would you like to?
Yeah, I would love to.
Oh, Mac.
Turn our mic up here.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So, you mentioned
You want me to donate
I do. I want you to donate, but first,
afterwards.
I want to ask a question.
Christine, just to say, Christine is a fellow programmer and she is an avid Dream Journal supporter. So she is definitely a therapist, and she has a lot of Jungian experience and her own experience. So she is very much in this imaginal realm that you and I have been talking about, Robbie.
Excellent.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that you assist people in integrating the experiences that they have using psychedelic drugs. And so what I wanted to bunny hop back to that, because I think the integration aspect of having, I know for me, I've had these tremendous, like numinous dreams and also incredibly powerful breath work journeys where really this other world opens up, and it's huge and it's tremendous. And then what are your recommendations for integrating that really deeply into our lives? Because speaking for myself, it's easy just to snap back into your life and maybe not fully integrate the gifts that have come through these experiences.
In our culture, we get very much identified with the wow aspect of the experience. Ooh, this was such an amazing experience. Oh, it was so, no. And as long as you stay in that, you cannot let the integration process happen because you're so overwhelmed by the experience. I became very clear with that when I talked to an Aboriginal non-career medicine man who tells me that he's flying, that he goes down, picks up the patient, puts him on his back. He becomes an eagle and he flies to the center of the galaxy, and there are the ancestors, and he plumps down on the ancestors, and that's then the healing process. And then he flies back with the but the most important thing, what I'm telling you, there was no wow in it whatsoever. He was telling it like I went to Starbucks and had a cup of coffee. So we get very much overwhelmed by the experience. So the first thing that I suggest is that you go back into the experience. You can flash back into the experience and begin to slow it down and begin to get away from the wow into what you were actually experiencing it. And then as you do that and you feel it throughout your body, you slow it down more and more until it's fully in your body. And then, as I said to Katherine before, then you try to get into non-self experiences so that you have this numinous dream, or through breathwork, a numinous experience in which there is a character walking towards you, or in which there is a building that is full of light, to begin to experience it from the perspective of the person walking towards you, or from the perspective of the building. Because when you do that, and you do that through a process that I that is called mimesis. You mimic the presence, and by mimicking, you become like the presence, and then you can become identified with the presence, and then you are out of the wow experience that habitual consciousness is having, and you can begin to see it from a completely different perspective, and that gets you deeper into the experience. It gets you deeper into meaning making, because you now get meaning making from a different storyline. And that then makes it possible to integrate it more into your daily life, because what I do is I help people to get into an exercise that is made from it, to feel it from first from your perspective and then from the perspective of others, and then hold that together and do that every day for a few minutes. Then slowly it begins to integrate into your life. And the importance of that is that actually from neuroscience, we know that we don't just experience the body, we don't just experience the outer world, but we are like an anticipation engine. We always anticipate, and thereby we don't get other experiences in, but we stay in our habitual state. And this gets you out of your habitual state. It, as you said, it breaks open the habitual state, and out of that something new begins to emerge that then can integrate into your system, and you're no longer in the same kind of anticipation. It shifts.
Beautiful. Thank you. I have like 5 other questions, but I'm not going to ask them. Thank you so much. Wonderful to meet you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So it's like, this is like interesting how you're talking about meaning making without interpretation. Like this really ties in with the slogan of the show is a dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. Like the meaningfulness does not require interpretation. And slowing down, I'm really integrating that, because I'm a fast person, and I know I am, and I know I go too fast. And so slowing things down is something that it seems like a really key part of this whole process.
Yeah, I spent my whole life trying to do it because I'm also very speedy, very fast. And so if you go really fast, you probably will stay in your mind.
Yeah.
Because the mind goes fast.
I can see that.
And the body goes much slower. So in order to get to the rhythm and to the time of the body, you have to go much more slowly.
Is wonderful. So Robbie, this is Robbie Bosnak. This is the founder of Embodied Imagination. And this time just flies by like it always does. You can find about Robbie's work at embodiedimagination.com. And I wonder if you have any final guests or, any final encouragements or reminders or thoughts about that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I think that people are very afraid about what is coming around the bend. One of the main fears at the moment is the fear of AI, and there are tons of fears that are happening. I think it is really important to acknowledge the fears, to feel them, and then to get out of your own perspective and go to a moment where you've been very afraid of the future and very afraid of what is coming at you, and then begin to experience it from the perspective of that which is coming at you. I'll give you one example. Do I have time?
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay. So I did a lot of work. I've been working in Japan for the last 40 years. Every year I go to Japan for several weeks and work there. And for the last 15 years, I've been working with people in Sendai who were overwhelmed by the tsunami, and where, of course, I think 15,000, lots of people died. And we got a group it was in 2011, and then we got a group of people together, therapists, and one of the therapists had a dream. She said, I am completely paralyzed. I'm sitting with my patients. I have nothing to offer them. We all went through this, and I have absolutely nothing to offer them. She has the following dream. I'm standing on the beach, and there's this huge wave coming at me, and then I wake up.
Mm.
And so what I do is I help her to feel herself on the beach. Now you have to realize that we work this dream in a setting of a group of all people who have experienced the tsunami. So that gives a sense of safety already. And because when you work with trauma, you have to get a safe place. So the safe place was already made by the group. I help her to feel her feet on the sand and the sand between her toes. And then I help her to focus, and she gets absolutely terrified. So I don't stay in it for very long, very briefly. And then I help her to begin to sense the presence of the wave, and the first thing that she saw was horses coming running at her.
Huh.
And so she is Japanese. She knows nothing of the horses of Poseidon. Poseidon has horses, right? That come running at you. So she knows nothing about it. So these horses help her to feel the power of the horses. And then through the power of the horses, I help her to feel this enormous power of the wave. And as she feels the power of the wave, and I help her to feel being completely overwhelmed on the beach, I help her to hold that together. Now, she said what happened afterwards is that she now no longer feels completely overwhelmed and paralyzed, because she has now gotten into the power from the other side, the power that is coming at her that was only victimizing her. Now she can feel the power at the same time. And as she can hold that together, suddenly she has a sense of agency.
Oh.
And that sense of agency is something that was completely gone after the tsunami. So that is, you can work with fear in that way by getting into non-self perspectives.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you, Robbie. This is so helpful for me to really, I've been wanting to understand this embodied imagination. I feel like I'm a few more steps down the road. So thank you so much for being on the show.
You're most welcome, and thank you for having me, and I will make a donation to your station.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And I want to thank all the listeners for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, and we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Katherine Bell. Contact me at experientialdreamwork.com or at Katherine@ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to keep up with the shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator. Audio editing by Suki Wessling. Phones by all kinds of people today. We got Christine Barrington, Eric Nelson, and Carl. All kinds of people out there. Matilda Rand. Intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. And tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
There's a time in our life, all the husbands and wives, all the boys and the girls, and everyone in the world knows that so much is wrong, but much more is right. We see in the darkness by shining a light. and push darkness away, and you are my everything. Yes, you are the reason I see the sun.